You watched it happen, and it still stings. The Texans came into Arrowhead and left with a win, handing the Chiefs a 20-10 defeat that suddenly makes everything feel a lot more urgent. This wasn't a one-off regular season hiccup. It put Kansas City on the back foot in the playoff race and dropped the team into a spot where every upcoming game now carries heavy consequence. The scoreboard doesn't lie. The Chiefs fell short on offense, turned the ball over at the wrong times, and paid for it. Against a Houston squad that played disciplined, timely defense. If you're asking whether this was a season-defining setback, at minimum, it's a wake-up call. And we'll walk through why it matters for the postseason chances, and what must change next. If you're watching, hit like and subscribe. We're trying to get to 6,000 subscribers, and your support helps the channel keep breaking down games like this. In the comments, drop a quick yes or no. Do you still think the Chiefs make the playoffs this year? You've watched enough Chiefs football to recognize when something is off, and against Houston it was clear from the opening quarter that the offense wasn't operating with the rhythm and force you expect. The problems didn't come from just one area. It was a layered breakdown where timing, protection, and execution all slipped at the same time. Kansas City moved the ball in stretches, but every promising drive seemed to hit the same walls. Stalled red zone trips, penalties that wiped out manageable downs, and missed opportunities on plays that normally keep Patrick Mahomes ahead of the sticks. The Texans didn't blow the Chiefs off the field, but they consistently forced long situations and dared Kansas City to string together perfect plays. Something this offense simply hasn't done enough of in 2025. One of the biggest turning points was how Houston defended the short and intermediate areas. They pressed routes early, crowded passing lanes, and made Kansas City rely on longer developing concepts that the offensive line couldn't consistently protect. Mahomes was hurried more than the box score even shows because the pocket kept collapsing inside out. When that happens, everything gets rushed. Reads, footwork, timing, and you saw the byproduct in those off-target throws on third down and the desperation scrambles that ended drives. It wasn't that Mahomes was reckless, it's that the structure around him didn't give him the steady base he needs. Receivers also had a rough afternoon, and even when they separated, the connection wasn't always crisp. There were contested balls the Chiefs normally win, and a few key moments where spacing broke down. Houston clearly studied how to disrupt Kansas City's rhythm routes, forcing the Chiefs to pivot into less comfortable looks. That's where you saw the offense drift into a predictable pattern. Shotgun sets, slow developing reads, and little of the under-center or motion-heavy concepts that have sparked the best moments of the season. When the Chiefs did try to get creative, the execution wasn't there. A missed block on the perimeter here, a pressure up the middle there, and those details added up. Defensively, the Chiefs fought hard, but spent too much time reacting rather than dictating. Houston stayed patient, stuck with high-percentage passes, and relied on quick tempo to keep Kansas City out of its substitution rhythm. The Chiefs didn't get consistent pressure, and that allowed Houston to convert critical third downs late in the game. The Texans also found success attacking Kansas City's edges with misdirection, keeping the linebackers a step behind. Even though the defense kept the game manageable, they couldn't produce the game-changing turnover or field-flipping stop that this team often leans on when the offense struggles. Special teams didn't tilt the game back in Kansas City's favor either. Field position leaned Houston's way for long stretches, which forced the Chiefs into longs, fields, and gave the Texans short ones. When you combine that with stalled offensive execution, the margin shrinks dramatically. That's exactly how an opponent like Houston beats you. Stay close, apply pressure, and capitalize when the Chiefs leave the door open. Watching that game, you could feel the frustration building because everything Kansas City needed to do, establish early rhythm, stay ahead of the chains, force Houston into uncomfortable situations, never fully materialized. Instead, The Texans dictated pace, Kansas City chased the game, and the result reflected that. If the Chiefs want to keep their playoff footing, these problems can't linger. The good news is that the fixes are tangible: rhythm, game planning, protection, and urgency. But the Chiefs need to apply them immediately. Before we move forward, drop a comment with your vote. What's the #1 fix Kansas City needs? Better offensive line play, sharper play calling, or more consistent wide receiver production? And make sure you like and subscribe to help us reach 6,000 subscribers. You don't need advanced analytics to know the Chiefs made their path harder, but the numbers still matter because they show exactly how steep the climb has become. After the loss to Houston, Kansas City's playoff probability took a meaningful hit across every major projection model. Before Week 14, most forecasts still had the Chiefs in that comfortable 65–75% range. Not ideal, but still a position where controlling your own destiny felt realistic. After the Texans left Arrowhead with a win, those odds slid down into the mid to low 50s depending on the model. That's not panic territory, but it does mean Kansas City is now in a week-to-week survival fight. The biggest shift comes from the tightening AFC landscape. You've got a cluster of wild-card contenders, teams hovering in that 8–9 win range, all fighting for the same 2 spots Kansas City might need if they fail to reclaim the division lead. The tiebreakers don't favor the Chiefs right now either. Conference record matters enormously, and dropping a game to Houston hits that category hard. Add in the fact that Kansas City has struggled against AFC opponents throughout the season, and you start to see why the margin is razor thin. Every AFC opponent on the remaining schedule now carries heavier weight, and the Chiefs can't afford another slipped opportunity. So what exactly does Kansas City need? The most realistic path is simple, even if it isn't easy. Win out, or at worst, drop only one more game. A 10-win finish keeps them firmly in the mix, especially if a few key matchups elsewhere break their way. You're now rooting for losses from direct competitors, teams like the Jaguars, Jets, Texans, and whoever emerges from that AFC North mess. One unexpected loss from those teams can shift the math quickly. But depending on help is not where a team led by Patrick Mahomes wants to be. And it's certainly not where this franchise is used to operating. Strength of schedule might actually help Kansas City regain control if the execution improves. The remaining matchups don't feature the same powerhouse stretch we saw earlier in the season, but the cushion is gone. The Chiefs need to treat every game like a must-win because one more AFC stumble could be the difference between sneaking in as the 7th seed and watching January football from the couch. The margin is that thin, and the scenarios are that unforgiving. There's also the psychological pressure that comes with knowing the season hangs in the balance. This team has thrived when the stakes rise, and Mahomes has a career history of elevating his play when Kansas City needs him most. That's the silver lining here. Despite the record and the missed opportunities, you still have the most reliable quarterback in football and a coaching staff that's been through this kind of urgency before. They know how to survive late-season battles, and if the team tightens the fundamentals, Kansas City can absolutely put together the kind of run that flips the narrative back in their favor. But none of that happens without cleaner execution, better situational football, and eliminating the self-inflicted mistakes that have kept this team from looking like itself. The playoff math is unforgiving, but the path is still very real. It just requires urgency now, not later. Drop your vote in the comments. Do the Chiefs finish with 10 wins or fewer? And while you're here, make sure to like and subscribe so we can reach our goal of 6,000 subscribers. You and I both know this team still has the talent to stabilize the season, but the margin for error is gone. From this point forward, Kansas City needs sharper execution, faster adjustments, and a clear identity on both sides of the ball. This chapter is all about the real fixes, the ones that can actually turn the season back in the Chiefs' favor, and the players and coaches who have to step into bigger, more decisive roles. Let's start on offense, because that's where the inconsistency has hurt the most. The Chiefs need to rediscover the formula that works: under-center looks, downhill runs with Isaiah Pacheco, and early down rhythm plays that get Patrick Mahomes into a flow before the defense can dictate terms. When Kansas City leans too heavily on shotgun, static formations, and long developing reads, the offense becomes predictable, and the offensive line becomes exposed. That's where the Texans feasted, and that's what upcoming opponents will replicate if the Chiefs don't take the initiative back. Pacheco is the tone setter, and you could feel how different the offense looked whenever he was able to get downhill with momentum. If Kansas City wants balance, if they want manageable third downs, if they want the defense to stop selling out on deeper concepts, the run game must anchor the structure. And when the Chiefs stay committed to that approach, it forces safeties down, opens intermediate windows, and allows Mahomes to dictate instead of react. That's the identity piece Kansas City has lost and desperately needs to regain. The receivers are the second major pivot point. Rashee Rice continues to carry the heaviest load, but he needs complementary reliability. This is where Hollywood Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster have to deliver cleaner route execution, stronger hands in traffic, and better spatial awareness when Mahomes extends plays. It's not about explosion. It's about trust. Mahomes needs targets he can rely on when the pocket shifts, when timing breaks down, and when defenses cloud the middle. Rice gives you that. Hollywood has flashed it. Juju has shown it in the past. Now they need to put it together consistently down the stretch, because Kansas City simply doesn't have the margin for sloppy route depth or miscommunication. Coaching is the next layer that has to improve. Andy Reid and Matt Nagy have the experience to fix this, but the timing of adjustments must happen faster. Too often this season, the Chiefs have spent a quarter or more feeling their way into the game before shifting into what works. In a playoff race this tight, that's too slow. Kansas City needs scripted urgency. Get Mahomes comfortable early, mix tempo, stress the defense horizontally, and resist the temptation to drift back into purely shotgun predictability. The Chiefs don't need to reinvent the offense. They need to streamline what they already do well and commit to the pieces that create rhythm. On defense, the situation is more straightforward but equally important. Steve Spagnuolo's group is still playing competitive football, but they need a spark in the pass rush. Chris Jones and George Karlaftis can't be the only consistent threats. This is where depth players must generate more push, so Spagnuolo doesn't have to dial up constant pressure just to hurry the quarterback. The Chiefs also need tighter pursuit on the perimeter. Houston exploited angles and forced missed tackles that extended drives. Small errors like those swing possessions, and possessions are everything now. In the secondary, Trent McDuffie remains the anchor, but communication on crossers and deep-in routes needs to improve. This unit is more than capable of tightening up. They simply need to reduce the few explosive plays that have flipped field position in recent weeks. With how thin the offensive margin has become, the defense can't afford to give opponents short fields or momentum-altering chunk plays. Getting back to disciplined assignment-sound football will go a long way toward re-establishing the dominance this defense showed earlier in the year. Finally, leadership becomes the deciding factor. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, they've all been here before. They've weathered mid-season lulls, injuries, pressure, and playoff chases. The formula has always been the same. Tighten fundamentals, cut out wasted possessions, and let your stars take over when it matters. That's still the blueprint, and the locker room still has the personnel to execute it. What the Chiefs need now is urgency, cohesion, and belief. The same fuel that carried this team through adversity in past seasons. The path is challenging, but it's far from impossible. A team with this quarterback, this coaching staff, and this defensive core still controls its story. They just have to reclaim it 1 week at a time. Before we wrap this up, drop the name of the one player you trust the most to spark the turnaround. And if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe so we can reach our goal of 6,000 subscribers.